Now, it took way too long, but I finally got to watch Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Being the 9th film by Quentin Tarantino, it's no surprise that this movie is dripping with his style. Whether it's the iconic yellow writing that's reminiscent of Pulp Fiction, the upbeat music, or of course, the plethora of foot shots, you know this movie is made by him. There's no doubt. Now, any astute viewer who's been a longtime fan of Tarantino will be able to instantly recognize all the references he makes to his own movies. I mean, let's be honest, we all know this. Tarantino is an arrogant bastard. But he deserves to be, right? And he doesn't hold back one bit in referencing his own works. But of course, that's not what we're here to talk about. That would definitely be the subject of another video talking about all the Easter eggs in this movie. What we really want to get down to is, was it good? And the short answer is, yes, it was very good. I think there's no better place to start than with talking about the cast. I mean, what movie do you find such an A-list cast? To get two heavy hitters like Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt in the same movie, I mean, that's a feat in and of itself, right? And, being two of the biggest names in the business, they're not overrated one bit, and their performance was astonishing, both of them, right? Leonardo DiCaprio just became this role so well, and honestly, it's really not much of a surprise considering the diversity of works that he has under his belt, right? But he became Rick Dalton in this movie, and I usually don't remember character names in movies, but I remember that because he just became this character. As the former star of a hit Western TV series, Dalton's character is a washed-up actor whose life is filled with drinking and chain-smoking cigarettes. Watching him go through those moments of depression and hopelessness and then sort of get back on his feet little by little was just so fun to watch. What I really love about Dalton's character arc in this movie is the fact that he develops in such a dynamic way and changes a lot, but at the end of the movie, he's still sort of his same self, right? He's really the same person, right? He's gone through these changes throughout the movie, but almost kind of comes full circle. Not in a bad way, right? His character definitely progresses, but it just shows how people are really inclined to go back with what they're comfortable with what they know. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But people don't really change that much in the real world. Now, of course, you can't talk about the cast without mentioning Brad Pitt. Now, Pitt plays Dalton's stunt double, Cliff Booth. And this character is just sort of a badass, honestly. Very quiet, very interesting, and just kind of does his own thing, and is really just a joy to watch on screen. Now, I'm not going to say too much about him because I don't want to, give any major spoilers away, but let's just say he is an awesome character, and if you watch this movie, you'll see why. And of course, you can't forget Margot Robbie, who played Sharon Tate in this movie. And while she wasn't in the movie quite as much as her two counterparts, she did a phenomenal job. Just brought so much joy and humor to the movie, and just really just worked so well with the cinematography, with all the shots that Tarantino was going for, and was just such a joy to watch on screen. But enough of the cast. Despite how great their performances were, where this movie really shines is in its style. Just the essence of this film is what makes it so enjoyable. Right, just starting with something as simple as the costumes, right? Looking at Rick Dalton's character with the turtleneck with the leather jacket, really getting that, that 60s, 70s Steve McQueen look is just awesome. It's so stylish, and just all the costumes in this movie were phenomenal. Even in one of those first scenes when they're driving down Hollywood Boulevard in their big Cadillac, all the signs are lit up, it's late in the evening, you get to see all the people walking around, and you just get the sense that you're there, that you are in Hollywood 1969, and it feels so real, and it sort of makes you just want to jump into the screen and just, ride around with them and just have a great time, and it just feels fun. It just is enjoyable to watch, just the setting of this movie, right? Just the aesthetic, how it looks, the color palettes, everything about it's just beautiful. it's honestly a stunning movie from start to finish. Even in the scenes that aren't quite as beautiful outright, you still get to know so much about the characters from their surroundings. One of the scenes that really sticks out to me is when we first get to see Cliff Booth's trailer, right? We get to see him drive from, Dalton's fancy mansion, and, he just gets off work, so he's coming home to his dog, and his trailer's kind of trashed. You get to see he's really living that kind of bachelor lifestyle. He opens the fridge, and all he really has in there are, 6-pack of beer and some eggs, and he's making macaroni, and, he's smoking a cigarette, and he throws the cigarette in the pan, doesn't really care, and there's a gun on the table. He sits down, watches TV, and you get to know so much about his character just from seeing how he lives and seeing all those shots there. This movie is just chock full of pop culture references. Whenever they're driving, you get to hear ads on the radio, and I didn't really look into this, but I'm guessing some of those ads really were actual ads in 1969, and probably a lot of them were just made up and stylized to sound like they were made in that era. But that's what I love so much. It's just that classic Tarantino style, to take something from real life and just put your twist on it. Just put that spin on it, and it's just stylish as hell. Even the way Tarantino uses different cameras and different techniques to shoot all the old movies, right? All the black and white, kind of 1950s style movie within a movie is just so much fun, because, I know Tarantino has a lot of fun playing around with different cameras and different, mediums and different film and whatnot. And it just looks so cool, right? It looks like you're really watching these old movies from the 50s or whatever, just really cheesy, ridiculous stuff, not too high quality, and just getting to watch that and then you're back in the actual movie is so much fun. It's almost like they're breaking down the fourth wall slightly. Even though it's not technically breaking the fourth wall, it's like it gives this, extra dimension, extra layer to the film, which it makes it feel even more real and even more exciting. Now, the plot of this movie is also very interesting. Now, while the plot is fairly linear for the most part, it still has those twists and turns and those disconnects that's so typical in Tarantino films. One scene that really stood out to me was a scene where Brad Pitt's character is up on the roof to fix an antenna or something like that, and he's having this sort of like flashback, or something reminds him of this time where he was on the set and got into a fight with Bruce Lee and was subsequently kicked off the set. And this scene takes 10-20 minutes just in one scene, and then you kind of forget where you're even at, and then it comes back to him and he's still on the roof and he's like, fair enough, and the scene ends. And I just thought that's so fun, how it takes you from one scene, throws you to another one, and then it brings you right back there. Really no explanation to it, but it just shows so much about his character and just is so much fun, right? It always keeps you kind of interested and kind of on the edge of your seat, just kind of wondering how they're gonna, how this movie is gonna go. Like, where are we gonna go next? What direction are we gonna go in? And it feels so freeform because of that. It feels so free. And even the way the characters come together and influence each other's, character arcs without really knowing it is, and of course, there's no better example of this than in Pulp Fiction, and you definitely get to see that, how all these events are happening simultaneously, and, not everyone is aware of what's going on, but you get to see what's happening in different characters' lives, and then they kind of come together in the end. And I'm not going to spoil the ending because it is a little interesting, but it's just really cool. I just love this movie. I love how it ended. It ended in a really, weird, but really interesting way, and I thought it was actually pretty satisfying because it doesn't actually wrap everything up, but I mean, that's real life for you, and things don't always wrap up neatly. There's always going to be things that are left unresolved, and I think one really cool example of that is the fact that it's revealed earlier in the movie that Brad Pitt's character, Cliff Booth, has a pretty bad reputation with some people because it's alleged that he killed his wife and got away with it. And it's pretty much assumed that he really did kill his wife and get away with it. And you show this scene of what's presumably right before the murder, and you think, oh, we're going to come back to this scene later in the movie and we're going to see how he kills her. But we don't actually see it. We don't actually see him kill his wife. So we still don't know if he did it. I think that's just so fun. And it sort of reminded me of an episode from The Sopranos season 3 called Pine Barrens, where they're in the woods with this Russian and they're supposed to kill him, but then he escapes. And he's like this ex-Special Forces agent. And he's still out there, and even though The Sopranos went on to do 3 more seasons, they never resolved that plot. And there were some episodes where it kind of came up, but we never know we still don't know to this day what happened to that Russian in the woods, right? That's an unresolved plot point, and I feel like so many movies are pressured to, resolve everything, to tie it up in a neat little bow, but Tarantino doesn't care. I mean, he's, I guess, above that, you could say, and I think it's really cool when they can take those kind of risks and make movies that, don't tie everything up and leave things unresolved, because it's even more fun to talk about and to rewatch these movies, and it almost challenges the viewer to think creatively and be able to fill in the blanks in their own head, and I just think that's super cool. Now, the last element I really want to talk about in this movie is how it portrayed real life events and real people even, which I think is really interesting, because from what I've heard, this movie actually has a lot of appeal to audiences of an older generation of, I guess what you'd call them, the boomer generation, people in their 60s and 70s and 80s now even, that actually loved this movie because it brought them back to, 1969, to like one of the most iconic summers in American history, right? The Summer of Love. And you get to see all, whether it's like the counterculture, the hippies protesting Vietnam, and of course you get to see what is the movie portrayal of the Manson family, which is really interesting because, again, I don't want to spoil the movie, but if you know what happened in real life with the Mansons, this is really interesting because Tarantino puts his own spin on it, his own twist, and we get to see like almost what we wish would have happened. And it's really satisfying to see, and I'm not going to give it away, but that part of the movie is so much fun. And I'm not going to say any more than that, but just watch the movie for yourself and just see what they do with it, because it's just such great stylistic filmmaking to take real life events, real life people, mix it with fiction, and then just put your own twist on it, right? It feels real, but it feels different, and that's what's so cool about this movie. There's so much there. There's so much in terms of pop culture references, in terms of style, in terms of real and fiction, and just kind of like where's the line between reality and fiction, and what could have gone differently, what happened and what could have happened. I think this movie is going to be super rewatchable because I just feel like you're going to notice something new every time you watch the movie. Not to mention the fact that it's hilarious. It's, violent in a lot of scenes, of course. It's actually a lot less violent than most of Tarantino's movies, but it definitely has your scenes of ultra violence, and it's just full of profanity, smoking, drinking, bullshitting, joking around. It's just fun. It's upbeat, and it's definitely a movie that I plan on rewatching again. And, if you're into these kind of movies, if you're really a big fan of Tarantino, I mean, hell, you've probably seen it already if that's the case, but I highly recommend it. It appeals to young generations that just want to be able to kind of feel nostalgic about a time that they weren't even around for. And that's kind of how I felt watching this, because I'm a huge fan of movies and I've seen all the movies of this era, and I pretty much feel nostalgia by proxy in a way. And heck, if you're of an older generation, you get to kind of go back to this time period and relive a really cool and interesting moment in American history, and just get to see that little twist on it, and just the style in this movie. And I've said it 100 times, but what else can I say? Go watch the movie. With that said, guys, see you next time. Peace.
All right. Take a bite of a red apple. Tell him Jake sent you. And cut. All right, this cigarette tastes like fucking shit. And by the way, who chose this photo, all right? I have a double chin, all right? Nobody notices that crap.